Legends, how's it going? It's Mr. Mac here. I've missed you guys. I hope you are doing well and that you're settling into term two pleasantly. Today we are going to be investigating characteristics and properties of a range of materials. And yes, it is by me, Year 6 Design Inc. I hope you enjoy it. Today, our lesson overview is this. This activity provides opportunities for you, the students, to understand what different materials are used for in particular purposes. I think that's a typo. Our learning goal for today is that you, the students, are learning to identify the types of materials and their uses. So not your use, but the materials use, that is. All right, some important definitions before we begin. Properties of a material refer to the distinctive attributes of the material. Some examples might be that some materials are transparent, whilst others you cannot see through at all. Some are hard, some are soft, some are rough, etc., etc. Properties can be observed with the naked eye by using a magnifying glass or lens or a microscope, or by testing and measuring the materials. And they are inherent to the materials, but they can be changed in a variety of ways. For example, by combining materials or changing the material's underlying structure. So the properties are there all the time. They can be observed, they can be witnessed. They're not just feelings that you have about the material. And finally, materials have been processed since early times, and they are processed to change their properties. It's actually the reason why our society is so advanced at the moment, is because people have worked out how to process materials into all kinds of useful properties. These are some really important definitions that you'll be able to use to actually categorize materials and to identify the uses of certain materials. Absorbency is the ability of the material to soak up liquids or gases. Density is a state or quality of compactness. So density is equal to the mass by the volume. So the more mass in the less volume is a high density thing, whereas not much mass and large volume is low density. Flexibility is the ability of a material to be bent and twisted, stretched, or rolled. Elastic is really flexible. Solubility is the degree to which material dissolves and depends on the temperature and nature of the solvent. So the solvent is really just what breaks down the material, so what it dissolves into. An example of solubility would be salt. If you put salt into water, what happens to the salt? Often it dissolves into that water, and certain properties of materials are highly valued because of how well they are soluble. Next one is strength. And strength is the ability of a material to resist or absorb forces without a change in form. This is a really important thing with materials when you're thinking about building a house. Choosing the right materials with the right strength is super important. Texture, it's the appearance and feel of materials. For example, rough, smooth, sticky, and grainy. This could be things like glass or sandpaper. These textures are really important. And if you choose a material that doesn't have the right texture, it could greatly impact on the thing that you're making. Like if you make a slippery dip that is rough like gravel, I don't think that many people are going to be going to your park. That's for sure. Next and last is transparency, and that's the ability of a material to transmit light so that objects can be seen distinctly through the material. So things like plastics and glass are things that are quite transparent, whereas things like timber or metals often are not. So these are some common materials: metal, plastic, wood, glass, ceramics, synthetic fibers, composites. So that's something that's made from two or more materials combined together. There's other materials like natural fibers, like cotton. There's really a multitude of different common materials, and we're going to be having a look at some today. So some common materials are glass, cement, and plastic. And you can see that glass is really effective at what it does because it's hard. It is not it's not soluble when added to water, and it's see-through, so you can actually see what's inside your glass. Cement's really useful because of its attributes. It's wet when you pour it, and when it dries, it's super firm and strong. And so people that are trying to fill a shape that is not a common shape can pour the cement in, and it will settle in a flat way most of the time, and it will be hard. So very useful material. And finally, plastic, very useful because we can make very thin, very cheap containers for things. Now, oftentimes these aren't very good for the environment, but if we use these effectively, we can make some very affordable, very useful containers. So they're just 3 examples. Our first activity for today is this. We're going to be looking at some common materials and trying to find what they're used for. So in the Word document that I've attached on OneNote, what I want you to do is to fill out the table and find photos of 5 different common materials and write down what they are used for in the picture that you've found and what characteristics do they have that makes them good for that job. So you can see on mine, I've chosen to use the example of wood. And I wrote that it's used for making furniture because it is relatively soft and it's able to be cut and shaped in many different ways by metal tools. Now it's obviously not so soft that when you sit in it, it breaks, but it's soft enough that it can be shaped and cut by metal tools, which is why it's particularly useful. Now there are 5 more boxes for you to fill out. So pause the video where you're at, jump onto the Word document, find 5 different common materials and an example of where they've been used, and then write down the name of the material, what it is used for, and why it is suitable for that use, and then finally copy your picture into that. Once you've done all 5, then you can come back to the video, press play, and see the next activity. All right, I hope you did really well. I hope it wasn't too difficult and that it was enjoyable. In this next activity, what you're going to be doing is creating a concept map. So now you know a fair bit about common materials and you've started to think reflectively about why they're used in certain situations. And right now what we're going to be doing is searching the internet for more common materials and how they're used. Identify by name the common material and their use, and then make a map of the information that you have collected from the internet, similar to the one that I've made. And I'll show you that map now. So what we're doing is we're categorizing the materials into different areas of life. So on my map, I made objects that I know, and I wrote down school, home, other, and at play. Now for your map, you just have home, school, and at play. And you can see that I've categorized the different activities, like the different products like the floor and fridge and pencils and toys, etc. And then I've, off that, written down the common materials that are used. So at home, we have a floor. Very thankful for our floor. And in parts of the house, it's made out of carpet. That's a common material. And in other parts, it's made out of wood. Now, you might have a cement floor or a lino floor or a vinyl floor, or it could be ceramic tiles. And you can write down the different common material that your floor is made out of. For fridge, some common materials I can think of are plastic for the shelves inside, maybe glass, and definitely metal. Now at school we have pencils and toys, but you could think about books or the playground equipment or school uniforms, and I just want you to write down the item and then the common materials that are used to make that item. So this should not take too long. What I want you to do is choose some items and then write down the common materials that are used to actually make that a reality, to make that item. Once you have done that, and this is what yours will look like, what I want you to do is to save that Word document with both the first activity as well as the second, and I want you to make sure that you're saving that Word document with your name. So it should say, well, for me, it says Hugh McIntyre materials, and then it will automatically say .doc or .docx, depending on what version of Windows Word that you have, Microsoft Word that you have. So first name, last name, and then materials, save that, and then upload that onto your OneNote page, and I'll be able to see your awesome work. Thank you so much for joining me, Year 6, and I look forward to seeing all the things that you get done.